like to give thanks to Mainstreaming who've sponsored a keynote speech here. Now, a little bit of background, we have a LINX program committee that helps puts together our agendas for these events. And we asked them whether they wanted to have something a little bit different as a topic for a keynote speech. It could be a technical one, but we've gone a bit of a different route this time. We've got a double Olympian, Chris Cook, a double Commonwealth champion as well. And he's just going to give a bit of a flavour of his story and a concept called 2 lengths of the pool and the power of keeping things simple. So I'd like to hand over to Chris now.
Great. Thanks, Jez. Right, so just a normal lad from South Shields. Most of the time when I turn up at conferences and I get on stage, people are like, he's not the Olympian, he's not tall enough, surely. He's not an Olympic swimmer. And that's my first message I always hit straight out the park is, just because you don't fit the mold doesn't mean to say you can't go and create it yourself. My story is called 2 Lengths of the Pool, and I'm going to weave in the power of keeping things simple right in the belly of the story, right at the heart of it. I've been sharing this story now for about 10, 15 years on virtual stages, real stages like today, you name it. And the feedback that I've got time and time again is that actually this is relatable to where we are now. Hands up, who's got a to-do list? Yeah, a few wry smiles there. Keep your hand up if you've got to stop doing lists, though. It's the most important list, and that's what we're going to talk about today. To share my story for the next 45 minutes, and I'll throw it out with some questions at the end, I have to go right back to the start, when I was 9. 1988, sat on my granddad's living room floor in South Shields, up in the northeast of England. I was sat in his council house watching the Olympics on TV. And as I sat there watching a bit of the rowing in the morning, a bit of hockey in the afternoon, and on the tea time on came the swimming. I watched a guy called Adrian Morehouse. Can anyone remember Adrian Morehouse? Yeah, a few oldies in the room. You're showing your age now, aren't you? I remember watching him touch the wall at the end of the race. He won the race by 100th of a second. The smallest margin of victory or error, whichever side of the coin you're on. And he touched the wall and he celebrated and he realized he became Olympic champion. And when he got out of the water and he was talking to the presenter, he said, this has been a dream of mine for so long. And now I've realized it. I'm an Olympic champion. And I turned to my granddad at the time and I said to my granddad, I said, that's what I want to do. I want to go to the Olympics. I want to race people. And my granddad said, well, you know, these people work all their lives for no guarantee of success. And I was sitting there thinking, maybe I'm a bit bad at maths, but I thought I'll take those odds. I'll have a shot at this. It sounds really good. He said something to us right at the very end of the sentence, which got me thinking. He said, if you can dream big and start small, sunshine, anything in life is possible. My last message before I throw it out, questions and answers, is really simple. Believe in the magic of following your heart. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris. Do we have any questions from the audience? Okay. Well, I have got a question.
Oh, go for it.
It's about your final race.
Yeah.
2008. And I was thinking this morning about maybe asking you a question. And you talk about the power of keeping things simple. And I was just trying to put myself in your position in that particular race, and it was a medley relay. So you're only in control of a quarter of what goes on in your team.
Yeah.
How does that, how do you actually deal with that when you've got to trust the guys that you're with, of course, but you've also got Michael Phelps just a couple of lanes down. There are 32 people who are actually taking part in those 8 lanes. And then I thought, I'm just focusing on all this other stuff rather than what I can do on my own, and it's that side of things. So how did you work it with your teammates, first of all? Were you all doing the same things in the same way? Or?
Yeah. You're absolutely right. You have to trust that they've got their handle on their part of the process. Look, the only thing I can control is my part of the process, which was 2 lengths of the pool right in the middle. They've got to do their 2 lengths, and so on and so forth. There's a couple of things that we used to go through in the team, and that is owning it. Own everything that happens to you, regardless of what comes left, right, centre. Own it. Don't throw that chance away to give that power to something or someone else, because it grows. So you've got to own it. The second part of that is you have to trust that the other people in your team have done all the preparation they need in order to secure their part. And actually what happens is in a team, in a relay, you get a real insight at the back end. It's not normally beforehand because people can talk the talk. It's what they deliver on the day. And it was interesting, at the Commonwealth Games, the very next day I won a gold medal in the men's 50 metres breaststroke. It was definitely a brilliant week at the office, that one. And 4 days later, I was in the medley relay with 3 other guys at the Commonwealth Games. And we won a silver medal, and the Aussies won. The Aussie men won, going crazy. And I was fuming. I was fuming. We lost the race, and I wanted to be, like I said, winning's an addiction. I wanted to get up there. And the bit I was fuming at, when I got out the water and we were waiting for the freestyle swimmer to come in, I realised we'd got silver. And I turned to one of the lads at the time and I went, "Oh, it's silver." And he went, "Be grateful for what you get." And I realised I was in the team with the wrong guy. I realised there and then that he was happy with anything and I wanted gold. I wanted to win. And I didn't know that beforehand. I knew that afterwards. And it completely changed the way we started to pick the team. I fed that straight back into Team GB and we started to pick the team in a very different way. We started to pick the team on who was willing to go to the outer edges, who was willing to push it, who was willing to answer every single question and go there. And we started to weed out people who weren't. And that meant that we had to move the standards on.
Yeah, so just going back to that race then again, we've mentioned a certain someone called Michael Phelps that basically changes all the rules there.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you go into a race like that, knowing it's kind of the elephant in the room, that he's already winning all the medals, that all the golds there? Would it be easy to actually drop your expectation levels, or do you have to keep talking yourself up in those situations?
That never crossed my mind. I was there to lay down my best, and it didn't matter who I was next to. It didn't matter who I was next to. In the men's 100 metres breaststroke, a guy called Kazuke Kitajima dominated for years. And every time I raced alongside him, it was just another person. And if you prepare as well as you possibly can do, when you walk out of those moments, your brain looks for the similarities, not the differences. And that's the key. When you prepare like nobody's prepared before, when you lay out the process and deliver it like you've never done before, you walk out and your brain looks for the similarities. If you haven't prepared, there's something missing. And your brain starts looking for the differences. It starts going, "Oh my God, look at the size of that crowd. Oh my God, there's Michael Phelps. Oh my God, there's the TV camera." But when you've prepared and you're looking for the similarities, your brain goes out there and goes, "There's the blocks. I've dived off those blocks a million times. There's the pool, it's 50 meters. There's the lane ropes. I've seen them a million times." Your brain goes in search of it and it becomes a really natural thing. So to answer your question, it never ever crossed my mind because the preparation we had on the inside was always about, it's your lane, it's your chance. And I think it's a really good metaphor for life because we get sidetracked by so many things, social media, what people say to us. It's no different than looking across the lane. I would never look across the lane. I wouldn't give that power away.
Yeah, love it. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Yep.
Hi.
Hi.
So you mentioned removing the distractions, I think, so that you could focus. So was your focus on the next stroke? Was the focus just getting to the end? Which was the primary? And with all of that concentration going on, did you actually enjoy swimming, or did it become a means to an end?
That's such a good question. Did I actually even enjoy it at times? It did become a bit of a job at some point, and I realised and stopped myself in that moment. But yeah, the focus for me was always stroke at a time. It was never ahead. Because if you're thinking about stroke ahead, you're always trying to control the future. I'm a coach now, and the one thing I say to all my coachees is whenever they're feeling overwhelmed, I say to them, overwhelm can only happen in the mind. It's when we think about the future. If you think about overwhelm, it's just, we can only ever experience that in our mind. We can't experience the future any other way. So it's a mind-created reality. It's a story, whether we like it or not. It feels real. So for me, swimming was a perfect opportunity to, whenever I felt that overwhelm, to come back to one stroke at a time. just concentrating on what we call holding the water, hands and feet, and delivering that part of the process as best I could. And it's interesting because there's so many swims I used to come out of and the emotions take over and you throw your goggles when it's been a terrible swim and you kick things in bags and all sorts. And I remember my coach came over to us one day and he said, I know you're upset. He said, how does it feel? And I went, it was terrible. That race was awful. And he said, all of it. Oh, not all of it. The starts were all right and the turns were all right and the middle bit was okay, but the back end, okay. So it wasn't all of it. And what he was really trying to do there was compartmentalize it into an area that we could then focus on. And that became the next part of our training. That formed the next cycle. And it all, for us, revolved around staying in the moment and being with it enough to listen, to understand, not just listen to respond.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh,
Question over there. Colin.
Hi there. Yeah, thanks very much. It's really inspirational to hear you talk. That's amazing.
Thank you.
You've touched on this a little bit before, but I'm interested in sort of the different elements that have led to you being successful and to other sort of champions being successful in terms of the balance of talent. You obviously got a huge amount of talent, but also that attitude that you mentioned in that example you gave, and then the hard work. You know, sort of how much of each is in there, or what's the sort of combination in terms of the balance of those elements?
Great question. So there was a performance director in the year 2000 who took over, a guy called Bill Sweetenham. I got loads of respect for him. He came from Australia and he completely changed the way we did things. So before the year 2000, if you touched the wall first or second at the trials, you got to go. There was no qualifying time per se. So there was 40-odd spaces, and the first 40 that touched the wall in the fastest time got to go. Bill Sweetenham came in and he said, forget that. He said, you need to be in the top 8 in the world. At the time of setting that target, out of the 47 who went to Sydney, he was really saying to the whole country, only one person's going to qualify in 4 years' time. And he nearly got stoned in the car park. People were waiting for him to lynch him. And little bit by little bit, people stopped complaining about it and fighting him and started to adhere to the standard. And I remember a conversation with him. I sat down with him 2 years in and I said, you know, what is the philosophy on swimming? How can I get back training and get the dizzy heights of the top 8 in the world? And he said, you've got to look at it this way. If you place talent here, commitment, hard work, dedication, and I don't know, anything else, any other skill level. He said, if you've got it that way on, you're never going to make it. It needs to be that way on. I'll never forget listening to it and something just clicked inside. For me, I was looking at those world-class athletes thinking, they've got something internal that I don't have, and it wasn't. There was just a stone I hadn't turned over that was very practical. And we went on this search of working with world-class athletes around the world. We started going to competitions that were really, really dreadful conditions, but trying to stay within 2% of our personal best, which was a massive task. And that's what started to make us. It was the fact that we weren't relying on the talent. We now switched it up. And now we were working on that hard work, that commitment. And my coach put a sign above the door when he walked in the pool. It was a really simple one that completely changed everyone's philosophy. And he said, hard work still works. Everybody's looking for that magic pill. Everyone's looking for that shortcut. Some things just don't have it.
Just to twist it a little bit, you said you've been working with businesses as well.
Yeah.
Have you got any examples about how that's worked in a business environment? You said you've worked with Microsoft, for example. I'm not necessarily saying them, but
Yes, I'm working with a couple of companies at the moment. Over the last couple of years, I started working with, I worked with Under Armour Golf UK. They've become the biggest market share within golf. It's just phenomenal because when they first started, it was like anything. It was a brand new thing to start. And their simple one-liner on the inside of the team is they sell shirts and shoes. That's their 2 legs. Whenever it gets stressy, whenever it gets a bit like, oh, what's happening? They go, hang on a second, we're just selling shirts and shoes. They do a lot more than that, by the way, but that's their simple one-liner. And it keeps them on track. And they ask themselves, is this going to help us sell more shirts and shoes? Yes or no? And they followed that process. I worked with a kitchen firm a few years ago who their simple one-liner is, we make boxes fit. That's what they do. They make boxes fit. And everybody in the team, from the factory workers right through to the designers and people implementing it at that level, make boxes fit. Currently working with a hospitality company, and their one-liner is, we make people happy. It's a common theme and a trend, and actually they're asking of themselves those questions in the boardroom. In fact, last week I was sat in the boardroom and wondering themselves, hang on a second, we're wasting our time. Is this going to help people, make people happy? And someone went, no. I went, let's move on. And it started to give them the realization that they need a purpose to be in the room or in the Zoom. If they can't say why they're in the room or the Zoom, they don't go. And they've liberated all of this time and this energy. And what starts to happen on the inside of the business is it silences the unnecessary so the necessary can speak. That's what it does. That's what they keep it simple. But the wrestle on the inside is our ego going, my job's a bit tougher than that, pal. It's all right for you sports people blasting up and down pools. You know, the wrestle on the inside of these businesses that I've worked with are there. The benefits when they've followed it have been unbelievable. It's been a privilege to work alongside them.
Yeah. And just finally, we did catch up in the break. Now, obviously, this is not your field of expertise, you would say, but you said some interesting things about what you've been watching here. What would you like to sort of tell the audience what you sort of thought about some of the technical content, for example, and what that meant?
I can't say I kept up. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. But I was just sat there for ages in awe. I was in awe of how you have a different language, completely different language to the world that I'm used to. And I was in awe of the fact that actually, the fact that you're geeky about your thing allows me to be geeky about my thing. And without you doing that, and without you laying down your passion in such a way, which I could see, I was just sat there in awe of it, there's no way I could do what I do. And that's what I said to Jez. And he said, oh, has it gone over your head? And I said, absolutely. But this is how I genuinely feel.
Yeah.
In that moment, I realized, and I was telling Jez this story, in that moment, I realized that that is our mission in life. It's to communicate our passion in a way that connects us through the similarities, through the things we all share.
Thank you very much indeed, Chris.
Thank you very much.